This is Justin AMZN on Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. Zoomed way out, taking a look at the 5 minute, and just wanted to point out a couple of things from last week. I think it was last week. The open today, right through here, where we had this resistance we sold off from twice, looks really similar to when we did that here on this day, selling off from this resistance, and here on this day, we sold off from this resistance. We didn't really do that, as precisely as we had like in the first like half hour, something like that. Like we did it on both of these days. We did something similar down here where we ran up to resistance, rolled back down, came back up, not quite as high. Um, and then we did something really different where we sold off much steeper, came back up, and then pushed on through that. So, but there's just been some similarities here from today to that day where I think pretty early on we did some retesting and then had a rollover that really lasted for a little while. Um, and so this one that lasted until a little bit past 11 o'clock. Let's zoom in a little bit more and see what we can see. So I'm only zooming into here because one other thing I wanted to point out is this place where we bounced, also with two really nice hammers here. It was really into the same places right here. So I'm going to just turn off the lines and go back to just the cursor. So here's the highs, and we literally bounced right off of that over here, pulling back. Great place to bounce, great place to have old resistance, new support. Didn't really play into that level very much yesterday. We had 25 minutes of just a wall right here that we went lower, but then ultimately pushed on through that pretty quickly. Didn't really pause at that level again. And so this is the first time to really come back down here and see, okay, is this resistance really going to be a new support? Sure enough, we came back down to it. That's where I actually was hoping we would come back down a little bit further here or here yesterday. It didn't happen. Even this didn't quite come back down that far. We did it today, and I'm sure some bears were looking to get in bearish here and push down lower. That's why we've got some lower wicks, and then it bounced. So let's just zoom in on today and looking at that location, looking at what's going on here. What could we have done with a call at that point? We're looking for something to hold as old resistance, new support. How could we have played this? So the 3600 call expiring this week came down just below the $10 price. I'm going to zoom in just on this, but so my favorite setup is buying at 10, stop at 9. You had to wait for those two candles to come in. It would actually, once they came in and put in a new low down at 845, 870 on this one and started to bounce, at this point, it's like, well, if I get in at 10 now, I got to have my stop way down at like 8. It did ultimately bounce. It did continue to work. It just took a while. Like this was really more sideways than up. And so the next thing you do is just look at another option to get this risk a little bit smaller. So if we go out to the 3650 strike, we're going to see that's a lot cheaper and maybe possibly too cheap. This one came down to like what was this, 349, 350, right in the 349, 350. So you could have been buying this like 4x3, and you would have had your range. You would have had the candle well inside the range, but that just didn't get going. It didn't even get up. Buying at 4, it went completely sideways. You had plenty of opportunities over the next hour or 2 hours to be still buying at $4, and then it didn't even make it up to 7, which would have been a 3-hour target. So this seems like it's a little too far out of the money. Let's go to 3625. There isn't one. Let's go to 3620. Sometimes I'm not checking these before I do the video. 3620. What does this one look like? This one's got, these candles are under $1 range, so that could work. Could we have set this up to get a stop below the low? The low is 550. Could we buy at 650? It's possible. 650 by 550 could have worked. And then that would have been 950 for a target. That would have been 3R over here. You did have other opportunities to be buying later when it pulled back into like 7, buying at 7, stop at 6. And that did make it up to 10, just the very next candle here. So that that would have been a nice 3-hour move. Even just that is a nice kind of rally there. And then even right at the close, it gave you some opportunity to get in on this kind of an S curve. So 3620. I mean, the only reason I'm finding that is 3600 is a little too expensive. 3650 is a little too far away, too inexpensive. What's something near the middle? 3620 is where I landed. I mean, I just as easily could have gone to 3630 to see what's going on. The volume's good on all of these, and especially this week ahead of earnings. This is kind of where I'm going to land on my expiration still this week and see what can I do. So these candles, you got even smaller ranges. This is one you probably could have waited on this and gotten in more comfortably at like 6 once it's holding that better, maybe even 5, maybe 550 over here. And then your stop is down at 450, which is still below the low, right? 465. Yeah. So it just takes a lot longer for that to work just because it's just 10 points further out of the money, but it still just takes longer. So if you had gotten in, let's say you got in at 6, you're looking for 9 as the target. You did have to hold into the last 5-minute candle. And that's when I really want to make sure I'm out of a weekly position. I want to make sure um, I'm going to get something out of it. Unfortunately, that one had dipped right back down really close to 6 here, and I would not have wanted to hold back, through this kind of a pullback on, something where it's like, oh, I was up to 2R and then it pulls all the way back and I basically break even. I would have been getting out like at an R in here when I see, okay, this isn't going to move up. Oh, and this is actually a really good resistance here because this was old support. It kind of worked a little bit here as support, then broke it. And this is our first time back up there. So getting out at 8, it was actually probably a good idea. So buying at 6 out at 8, that's 2 hours. You're not going to try and hold in the 3 hours. That's how I would have done this one if I was playing that strike. So if we do just take a look and see what is an option doing next week, could we have had a better play midday? Let's just go first to the 4,000 strike and see how is this one moving. Sorry, I shouldn't have zoomed back out because that was still fine. We had a nice hammer here. You could have bought at 6, but then you're holding all day and you only get out at maybe 7. So that's an R. $100 risk. That's all you're going to get there. Is the 3,900 any better? Buying at 10, maybe out at 11. Yeah, not much better. And we're 100 points closer. 3,800. This is just too expensive. This I'm not comfortable with. A $1,700 strike with spreads, bid-ask spreads that are probably almost $100 to begin with. All it takes is it to dip and you're out. And I've traded those, so it's not fun to do that. This is one where if you had somehow bought at 18 and stop at 17, or bought at 17, stop at 16, you could have gotten a 3-hour move. Actually, if you bought at 18, you're holding right into the last 5-minute candle, which I don't recommend on something like this. And then buying at 17, you're out at 20. Again, it's just too expensive to do this, especially for earnings. And I guess I would think about maybe even just going further, like a few more weeks out, like even going to next month's monthly expiration, which I'm not sure what the date is of the middle of, why is my calendar? Middle of August should be the 20th. So if we come back in here and put in August, and then let's go a little further out, like 4,200. What is this doing? Yeah, there's like nothing going on here. So this is even worse than next week's expirations. If we just look at 4,000, it's going to be expensive, but there should be better volume. That's a little better actually. The volume's okay. 4,000 is a really solid strike. You really could have bought this at probably 1450. Even 15 as it dipped back down over here, went sideways. Buying at 15, but you're only out at 16. you're not going to hold into the last 5-minute candle. Not on this. That's my guess. So that's still only an hour. I would have stuck with this week's expiration and being just a little ways away, probably a little further away than 3,600, just because this, the risk that I wanted to get, I'm sorry, the $100 risk I wanted to be at, I couldn't really get with what this set up to be. You got a little bit of the RSI double bottom here, didn't really do another dip. You had some dips later, and I don't have enough data yet to say this is going to work. I'm waiting for a dip over here. When you have a double bottom shape like this, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I don't have enough data to say, yeah, wait an hour for it to dip and then it works, because there's been some of those where I've gotten in, I've played it later, and I still lose on it. So yeah, more for me to figure out there. If you've found any of that, if you've been able to dig into RSI a little bit more from what I've talked about, let me know what you've been able to do, and hope this helps. This is Just AMZN. Thanks.